apart from the Libyan problem and so on, there are structural issues in the global economy. Structural issues which will, like the fault lines in the Earth's crust, will result in one or other kind of tremor every now and again. And the world's got to get used to the idea that we're moving in a reasonably positive direction. I think the IMF and so on are still talking about global average of 5%, led largely by emerging markets. But there are elements of uncertainty. We've got to monitor those uncertainties and still learn to live and develop strategies for South Africa which enables us to cope within that kind of global environment. And the lessons from elsewhere, to the extent that I've been able to understand them, is can we just stop talking and get on with doing things? Somewhere there's going to be a new chemistry that will begin to emerge, and that will ignite growth in South Africa. Nobody in the world is going to be able to give you a textbook which says follow this formula, steps 1 to 10, and you'll get 7%. There's no formula of that kind. Mike, you agree? Right? But we've got to damn well try, you see, and we'll get there. On the question of inflation, I think we can see the picture that's emerging. But remember, what we're saying in South Africa is how do we create conditions for the central bank in South Africa to do what it considers to be the right thing at the right time. In other words, where we have inflationary pressures coming from areas that government or the private sector has influence over, can we moderate those pressures in some kind of way? Not tell the Reserve Bank what it needs to do. It's independent. It must apply its mind and must do whatever it thinks is actually appropriate.
Although the sort of transformation that we've seen in our economy has not actually become inclusive. This is why we talk about inclusive growth. How do we bring in, that section of society that has been left out of this transformation of the economy? Because really what we're striving for is higher growth and more inclusive growth. That's really what I believe we should do.
Global economy as a whole and country economies are asking the same questions we are asking, which is how do we transform? We use the word transform. How do we transform our economies? What is it with our economies that's not giving us jobs, that's not giving us growth, that's not giving us less inequality, and therefore turning into our economies into more inclusive economies? If you look at real expenditure, in the previous era, what we call the manual era, which was a very different time. You see, then I was at SARS producing the money, you see. You might remember. But it was a very different era. It was a period of 5% growth, revenues were flowing in, you could move to a surplus, and you could have real growth in expenditure of 9 to 11% per year for about a 5-year period. Now, if you look at where we're going currently, it's around 2.5, 2.7% real growth. Now, some might argue, well, why don't you make that zero? We say no. The Pittsburgh summit in 2009 of the G20, after lots of debate and lots of discourse, came up with a formulation which says each country will find its own route, each country will find its own level, but the general principle is that we require growth-friendly fiscal consolidation. And again, let's put this out for debate among South Africans. Do we want to cut our budgets to the extent where government plays very little stimulatory role in the economy? I don't think that's the way we need to go. We're not ideological, austerity-bound people in South Africa. Some countries are. They need to do it because there's a point to prove in that particular direction. We believe that coming down from 9% real growth to 2.7% real growth is a serious issue. And those numbers indicate that we are moving towards fiscal consolidation. Are we moving into a position where debt is unmanageable? Definitely not. I think we've got a huge debt. The same people that were managing debt in the Treasury in the good old days are the same people who are doing it today. So the personnel hasn't changed, the policy hasn't changed, the times have changed.